I bought my family their dream vacation, only for them to give my seat to my stepbrother the day before we left. For 3 years, I worked double shifts at the hospital to save for it. 2 weeks in Bali. Not for me, for them, for the family that seemed to forget I existed the moment my father married Diane. Diane, with her perfect hair and carefully practiced smiles. Diane, who called me sweetie while quietly removing every trace of my mother from our house. Diane and her son Evan, who stepped into our lives wearing designer clothes and carrying an endless sense of victimhood. My father gave Evan my bedroom, the one with the bay window and the star-shaped light fixtures my mother had installed before cancer took her. He needs the space for his anxiety, Dad explained, moving my things into the basement without ever meeting my eyes. I didn't argue. Instead, I worked. Every holiday, every weekend. 3 years of skipped birthdays and canceled plans. My hands cracked from hospital disinfectant. My spine ached from lifting patients twice my size. Last Christmas, I placed 11 envelopes under the tree. One for Dad, one for Diane, one for Evan, one for each of my 4 siblings, and 3 more for their partners. Inside each envelope was a first-class ticket to Bali, reservations for a private villa, and vouchers for excursions. A $47,000 gift, the result of 1,100 hours of overtime. They screamed. They cried. They called me the best big sister ever. Even Evan hugged me, his first voluntary hug in the 5 years since he'd moved in. The night before the trip, I was packing my swimsuits when Dad appeared in my doorway. He shifted his weight the way he had years ago when he told me Mom wasn't coming home from the hospital. Sweetheart, he began. We need to discuss something. Diane appeared behind him, resting a hand on his shoulder, her face carefully arranged in concern. Evan's therapist thinks this trip could be transformative for his social anxiety, she said. But he's nervous about being around strangers. I nodded slowly, confused. That's why I booked a private villa, no crowds. Dad cleared his throat. The thing is, the airline made a mistake. They overbooked. Someone has to stay behind. The room seemed to tilt. They overbooked 11 first-class seats on an international flight. My voice sounded distant. That's statistically impossible. Diane's smile tightened. The important thing is this trip could change Evan's life. Your therapist says you're doing really well lately. I didn't have a therapist. Well, rebook you on a flight tomorrow, Dad added quickly. You might miss the first excursion. But who's paying for this new ticket? I asked. Silence filled the room. Well, since you offered this as a gift, Dad trailed off. In that moment, the truth settled in my chest, cold and sharp. They were taking the seat I paid for and expected me to buy another ticket the next day, during peak season. I smiled. Of course. Relief washed over their faces. I knew you'd understand, Diane said, squeezing my arm. Family sacrifices for family. That night, after they'd gone to bed, I made 3 phone calls. The next morning, I drove everyone to the airport. I helped with their luggage and waved as they disappeared through security. Then I returned to the empty house, packed my real suitcase, the one they'd never seen, and headed back to the airport. Not to the regular terminal. To the private one. My flight wasn't going to Bali. It was going to my new apartment in Boston, the one overlooking the harbor. I paid for it with the refunded first-class ticket I had secretly canceled weeks earlier, right after I overheard Diane and Dad planning their little switch. They're probably landing in Bali right about now, only to discover that their excursion vouchers, hotel reservations, and return flights have mysteriously vanished, and that the credit cards I've been paying off for years are no longer connected to my accounts. Sometimes the family that demands sacrifice for family learns that sacrifice can go both ways.